Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Barry Beckham. This video is another under the heading of image presentation. In my view, one of the simplest but most effective presentation techniques is when we apply a very thin line around the outer edge of an image. And I've found the need to do this very often. Now, the obvious follow-up question is why? It's because I'm often displaying images of one aspect ratio on a presentation device of a different aspect ratio, and when that happens, we tend to see around the edges of the image in black. If the image we're presenting has very dark pixels around the outer edge, we can often lose sight of where the image boundary is. Now, this can upset the composition, and at times it can look like someone's taken a bite out of the corner of the image. Now, one example of this is when we view our 3:2 or 16:9 aspect ratio images on a mobile device that runs with a 4:3 aspect ratio. A very thin line around the edge of the image often makes quite a difference. Another example of this is in camera clubs, where we'll see our images on a screen in a darkened room. We have the same issues, where the dark edges of the image are lost against the surrounding blackness. The images that I post on Flickr is another example. Although I almost always put a very thin line around the images I post there, the background doesn't appear to be absolute black. It seems to be a dark charcoal, but nevertheless we still have the same issues. So the solution to this problem is to apply a very thin line around the outer edge of the image, but it's very easy to get this line a little bit too thick, too bright, or too colourful. We don't want the line competing with the image, so it does need to be very thin. Usually a mid-grey colour is all we generally need. The image I've opened up into Photoshop here is from a 20 megapixel camera. It's not been resized or cropped in any way. Let's go through the process of applying a thin line. We can go to our Select menu and choose Select All, but there is a universal keystroke for selecting all that works in practically every program we use. Control A. There you see the selection around the outer edge. If I go to my Edit menu at the top left of the screen, I can go down to Stroke. What I'm going to do here is put 3 pixels of colour, and this is the colour I've chosen. You can see it's a mid-grey. I'm going to place it on the inside edge of the image and click OK. Now I'm going to hit Ctrl D to remove the selection. The line is very thin. How do we know if that's appropriate? One way we can do that is if we move our cursor into the area outside of the picture and right click, I can choose black. If I then touch the F key once, twice, we can view the image as we would view it on a black background. So now we get a true idea of the thickness of the line we've applied. In this window, I can still hit Ctrl 0, which will make the image fit the screen. Now we can see that the edge line I've applied, although it was in a mid-grey, it's doing the job that I intended it to. It's not too thick, and it's certainly not distracting from the image. But if this image was even darker than this, we may even want to choose a slightly darker grey. Those are going to be personal choices. To get back to Photoshop, just touch the F key again and we're back where we left off. I'll just reduce the size of this a little bit, and I'll just right click into that no man's land outside the picture and go back to my dark grey. Now with the spinning round of the screen, you can see I've opened up a similar image which may need a thin line around the outer edge. What I'm going to do first off is to just right click in the grey area and change this to black. And I think what I'll also do is hit the F key a couple of times and Control 0. But what I'm also going to do is hit Control F4. And you can see with that simple keystroke, the thin line has been placed around the outer edge of this image. Now that keystroke is an action. We can record it in just a few seconds. So if we're going to be applying this thin line quite often, and generally speaking, the thickness and the colour of the line is probably going to need to remain fairly static, then why don't we make it easy to do? Let's create a quick action. I'm going to go to my Windows menu and I'm going to open up my Actions palette. We have a lot of default actions here and I've closed them up. There's quite a number there. But I've got a new set which I've called Barry's. We can create new sets. Look, new set, and then a new action within the set. So within Barry's set here, you can see I've got action 1, which is Control and F4. Let me select that and delete it because we're going to create a new one. Let's tuck them over here somewhere. So up to the top right of the Actions palette, I'm located in my own group of actions. Top right, let's make a new action. We'll call this one Thin Line. We could actually put how many pixels we're using because we could make a couple of these of different sizes. But we'll keep things simple here. We can choose a function key. We can have this running with just one function key, but I already use F4 for something else. So I'm going to tick the control. So I'm telling the software, apply what I'm about to record when we hit the control button and F4. When I click to record, you see a little red light come on down at the bottom of the Actions palette. Now all we've got to do is what I demonstrated a little while ago. Control A to select the outer edge. Let's go up to our Edit command, top left, and choose Stroke. Here I'm going to increase this to 5, just so you can see it's applied, not because we really need it. If I click into the colour, you can see I'm going to stay more or less, well I'll tell you what, let's make it a little bit darker because we've made the line a bit thicker. And when we see the colour of the line over here, it looks as though it may not do much at all for our image, but in fact it does. Let's click OK to that. We're going to put the 5 pixels on the inside of the image as before, so let's click OK to that. And all we need to do now is go to the select menu at the top left of the screen and remove that selection. Or if you'd like to use the keyboard shortcut, Control D, remove the selection. Then we need to stop the action. We can do that with a little stop button here, and we're done. Let me close down my actions here, and we'll test what we've just made. First thing I need to do is to remove the white line that I've currently got around this image. Tell you what, let's pick a new image and we'll try the action out on something different. So here we have a famous old castle in Scotland, shot with a 20 megapixel camera, exactly the same as the others. As you can see, I've given that a black background and I've hit the F key in Photoshop to isolate the picture as we can see it here. Control and F4, and there's the thin line applied instantly from the action we just created. Now there is another way we can apply a thin line using Photoshop's layers and the layer effects. What I've done is to open up an image which I think is in need of that line, and I've already right clicked just outside the image to turn the background black. We need to remove the lock to the right of the layer thumbnail just by clicking on it. Down to the bottom left of the layers we need the effects and we need stroke. We can tick the stroke, and if we click on this area here, it opens up all of the parameters. Now you can see they've already been applied, and obviously the last setting was quite high. We've got 31 pixels. Let's reduce that to 3 pixels, which is what we've been using. Now we can see that looks a little bit fine, so maybe on this occasion I'll just increase it to 5 so we can see it just that little bit more clearly. We get the opportunity, just as we did before, to place the line on the outside, inside or center. I'm going to stay with the inside, and we also have the opportunity to choose any color we like, from white right at the top to a real dark gray, or something in the middle, which is probably going to be more appropriate. Click OK, click OK. There we have the effect. The beauty of this effect is if we save this as a Photoshop file and open this up again tomorrow and then realize we've got the edge effect a bit too thick, we can just double click on the stroke sitting beneath the thumbnail. We can go straight back in and we could make an adjustment and correct things. Now, to bring this video to a close, let's take one quick look at an edge effect on a much lower resolution image. Here we're looking at exactly the same image we looked at just a few moments ago. The big difference between the one you was looking at then and now is the previous one was 6000 pixels on the long side. This one is 1920 pixels on the long side. So if I were to remove the lock here, and I were to go down to the effects and the stroke command, and we were going to put on exactly the same number of pixels as we did a few moments ago, already you can see the difference the resolution has made to this image. To get the similar sort of effect to the one we got before, we'd need to apply a stroke here of about probably 1 or 2. Let's try 2. That looks okay, but even 1. If I put 1 on there and I made that colour just a little bit brighter, there we have it. I'll see you next time.